Hi there. So, welcome to Making Waves. Making Waves is a informal and hopefully quite playful discussion panel about making it with music, sound art, and film as a sound practitioner. So, I'm joined by three professionals who, between them, have decades of experience across those three sectors. So, we've got Alex Mills, Julian Brown, and Roberto La Piana, who's joining us remotely. So, starting alphabetically, would you like to give us an introduction, Alex?
Yeah, I'm Alex Mills. I'm a singer-songwriter originally from Leeds, but now living in London. I mostly make dance and electronic music. I've worked with people like Basement Jaxx, Sunny Federa, Tricky, Camel Fat. Yeah, mostly performing on the songs, but writing all of them as well. And yeah, I also have my own project signed to Ultra Records and Ultra Publishing, where I put out my own material. So yeah, that's me.
I'm Julian Brown. I'm a sound artist, composer, and freelance sound designer. I've got over 10 years experience doing sound installations, working with brand consultancies and forecasting agencies, and really quite a sort of broad spectrum of things. At the moment, I'm working on a public sound installation as part of a sort of rail infrastructure project. So yeah, pretty mixed. I studied BA Sound Arts at LCC 10 years ago, and I also went back to study the masters a few years ago. Time goes quickly. Yeah, and then I also, as well as being a practicing artist with my own sort of field recording, vinyl field recording, sound walk practice, I work as a freelance sound designer for sort of commercial sound branding, things like that. Yeah.
Cool. And Roberto?
Hello, everyone. I'm Roberto. I'm from Italy. Can we say that? I moved in London in 2011, and I enrolled into audio engineering in 2014 and graduated in 2016. And I started working as a sound recordist in 2015, so basically during my studies. And yeah, so I do have like more or less six years experience in film and TV, corporate and commercials as well. And yeah, that's me basically. And yeah, I do this as a full-time job. And apart from the last year, which wasn't really good because of the pandemic, of course, but still waiting for jobs coming. But yeah, that's me.
Okay, so
do you want me to say anything? So. Hello, sorry. Should I introduce myself?
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, okay, cool. Hi, I'm Matthias. I'm also a graduate from the LCC BA Sound Arts, and now I'm there as a staff member as well, associate lecturer. I've worked for, I think it's more than 20 years now, across varying fields, including audiovisual live performance, media art installations, sound design for other artists, and for film, advertising, TV, theater, and also various areas of visual arts. So, yeah.
Cool. So we've got a really diverse range of talent.
Can you introduce yourself?
Oh yeah, who am I? I'm Moogs. So I'm Moogs. I'm a sound artist and DJ, and I start and what?
Curator.
And a curator, yeah, a curator, and also a journalist in the arts world. And so I started at LCC back in 2007 with Julian. We were on the same course at LCC, and I started making sound art probably, yeah, basically then, like improvised electronic stuff then. I've been doing music production and DJing since then. And since returning to LCC, as I did to do my third year, I started doing curating and doing sound installation. And yeah, just generally trying to have a novel approach to exposing sound practice in ways that I haven't seen done. And yeah, so between us, I think we've got it all covered. And so that sounds like we've got over probably 45 years of combined experience there. So as the purpose of Making Waves is essentially to help graduates that are coming from sound arts or anybody coming from an emerging sound practitioner background to essentially figure out all the things that you don't necessarily get taught at the beginning. What we're going to do is reflect on the lessons that have been learned over those shared decades of experience. So on that basis, let's have a listen to Alex on advice that you would have given yourself 10 years ago.
God. Okay, so advice I would have given myself 10 years ago. I would definitely, a couple of bits actually. I'd say the sooner you add some extra strings to your bow, the easier things will be. I think people coming into the music industry just wanting to be a singer will struggle if they don't know how to write. And I think being a singer-songwriter and a performer, it definitely helped me to learn how to DJ. I know that definitely broadened how much I was getting booked, and yeah, gave me so many more opportunities and opened so many more doors. So I definitely would say the sooner you sort of add some additional things to your plate, the easier things will be for you. And the other thing would be that build a good rapport with your solicitor, or find a good solicitor. No, not just for not just for sort of like legal reasons, but I mean like solicitors, especially music solicitors, they know everybody in the industry, they know all the publishers, they know all the managers, they know all the record labels. So if you build a good rapport with them, whenever when you first start out, essentially you could give them, you know, a few of your tracks. They can introduce you to all the managers, they can introduce you to all the publishers and all the record labels. It will save you a lot of time knocking on people's doors. If you just go straight to them and sort of present your best work to them, they can basically send it to everybody, and it kind of kills two birds with one stone.
Wow, that is a really unexpected surprise. That actually the law industry is a way to the music industry. So in terms of finding a solicitor, basically a tame music-oriented solicitor in order to do that networking, what would you recommend as a first step?
Literally Google music solicitor. Yeah. I would advise people to do it, a music solicitor based in London. I'm sure there's amazing and fantastic music solicitors up and down the country, but this is kind of the hub where you're gonna find the best one. So I'd find Google and basically hit them all up, send them a concise email. Don't send them loads of music, send them a SoundCloud link to maybe 3 of your best tracks. Make sure that they're at a real high level before you send them off. And just get straight to the meat. You know, if it's a manager that you want to say, look, I want representation, or if you feel that you can manage yourself, you know, I really want to get a record deal. Could you introduce me to some people, or could you? My old solicitor, what she did was she literally put my music on her SoundCloud page, and it got thousands of views. And all the people that were looking were managers and record labels. So that really really helped. So yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, something I think about is, when I think of a solicitor, is expensive.
Yes.
So should anybody be prepared to fork out anything upfront? And if so, what kind of figures for a consultation and so on?
This is why I said build a rapport as well, because you're going to get smaller contracts that you should always have them looked over, regardless of, even if it's the amount that you're going to get paid for the contract is the fee that you're going to pay for the solicitor. Still get it looked at. But with my solicitor, because I built up a rapport and I said, look, I'm going to have lots of little things before I get to my big things. So she said, well, what we'll do is we'll put like a fixed amount. So if it's just a smaller contract, we'll do 300 quid. That's it. And that's, you know, no matter how much it's got to work, as long as it's not like a mountainous contract, then we'll just have that as a standard thing. The real contract that music solicitors will get paid for will be your publishing contract or your record contract, and within those contracts, the publisher or the record label actually pay your solicitor's fees, so you will never have to pay that anyway. So yeah, you just build up a good rapport with them, and you're bringing them consistent work. Then 200, she's done it for like 200, 250, and then when I was getting more and more and more, she's like 300. But yeah, she's great, and I know she's got my back, and I know that she can, I can just give her a contract or call her, whenever, and that she's there, she's going to do a sterling job. So I feel like I'm in good hands, and it's worth every penny. At the end of the day, that song could go on and be massive. You never know how it's going to do, and if you've got a bad deal negotiated, you might as well not bother.
Right.
Yeah.
So it feels like the first step, if we break it down into the steps, would be one, have a digestible body of work that you are in a position to share.
Make sure you've got that on tight.
Yeah.
First. Yeah.
Okay, and then there are kind of like sub steps within there, like have listened to that on a range of different sound systems, have it mastered obviously by a professional, and also have a variety of people listen to it and give you feedback and incorporate that critique. That's step one. So basically having that body of work.
Yeah.
And would you recommend that to be like an EP size?
You'd be talking about just when you present it to the solicitor.
First time.
I wouldn't even say you need an EP. I definitely would say don't send them lots of different random tracks. Like here's an 80s tune and a reggae track. I have actually, had CDs of like so many different genres, and it's difficult for people to take you sort of seriously as an artist, that they can see, oh, this person actually has a lot of potential if you don't know who you are yet either. So I think, I guess then in that respect, having something that's, not too dissimilar to an EP, but a collection of tracks that sit within the same sort of framework and that, feel, like the same sort of genre, or the same sort of, that they live in the same house at least, would definitely be a good idea.
Wow. Okay. So we get together a couple of tracks that are in a similar vein, maybe to something that they could relate to. So I'm thinking if you were to send very obscure electronica or breakcore or hard techno or something, do you think that would be received well by us?
I don't think it really matters what the music is. At the end of the day, and that's what's good about going to a solicitor. It's not like you're having to fit a round peg into a square hole. They look after everybody. You know what I mean? They'll have clients, who sort of hard rock or like, house music or like R&B or whatever. So for them, I don't think that matters as much. But I do definitely think that even when you do go to them, or if you do get the opportunity to go in and then sit down with them, you should still treat that as though you're going in to meet a record label. You should still dress, this is how I want to be received. This is how the physical representation of my music should, look, in terms of, yourself there.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the first step is get your body of work together, a couple of tracks. Second step is find as many solicitors as you can, music solicitors on Google. Right, I'm imagining a tailored email that's very cordial, very like not too formal. Or what kind of tone would you strike?
I would say quite. I'd say just be quite succinct and quite professional. I don't think they are sort of solicitors. You're not friends at this point, but I think try and put a bit of your own personality in there as well. I'm sure they get lots of emails. At the end of the day, the most important thing is the music. But yeah, I think try and be, show a little bit of yourself and a little bit of your personality, but definitely keep it professional. Yeah.
And then on that subject, think about the detail of the email. Having your own domain name, having a signature with your picture in it, having that kind of professional approach. That would kind of lend credibility on them.
Absolutely. I would even say, like, in your signature, if you have a link to your Instagram, that's going to help massively. If they can then listen to your music, then click directly onto your Instagram, see how visually you look as well as how you sound, and they can automatically think, oh my god, that would be perfect for BMG, that would be perfect for this manager, that would be perfect. If they can see it, they're more likely to push it. I mean, if they don't see it at all, even if they don't particularly like it, but they can see it, they'll still introduce you.
Amazing. So the third step would be after they've hooked you up, use them, build that rapport, and feed the revenue that you are bringing in as a freelancer back into having them review your contract, so that they start to trust you as a client, and then they'll start.
As and when, I think I think once you've sort of like once you've got the introductions, that's really the main part. I mean, it depends on how much work you're getting in anyway, and you don't need to be. If you've got a manager at that point that knows a little bit about law, you might not have to always go. But if it's something that is like you know, it's an actual track that's going to be released on a major label or a good independent label, then you really want to make sure that you get a good solicitor to look at it. But it's not always imperative. I think that if by that point you have like you're starting to build a bit of a team, or you've got somebody in your corner who has a basic understanding of a short contract, you don't really need to be, you know, going at each opportunity.
Awesome. Okay, so there's basically 2 steps then.
Yeah.
1, 2-step.
2-step.
Decent, concise, very personal, like who you are, your spirit in the email, in the music.
A link to your Instagram.
Link to Instagram, show your image, and send that in cordial, succinct emails to as many music solicitors as possible.
Yeah, I would. Yeah.
Boom.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, I was not expecting that. That blew me out of the park.
Okay. You're welcome.
So there's an inside track. Okay, so now I'm gonna like look at how to get that first paid gig, to get that 300 quid to pay your brief to look over the contract. So, Julian, would you like to give us a reflection on how you got your first meaningful gigs that paid the bills?
Yeah, I will. But just before I answer that, I want to say like that. I mean, that was an amazing answer, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like it's things that I wish I heard 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. No, but the reason, particularly because it connects to a lot of my answers just in general about like, you know, if I could go back in time, what I'd say. And one of the things is that when you're kind of just finding yourself, which is the first step that you talked about, I think that's really, it's easier said than done.
Definitely.
And that's a big part of the journey. And I just remember a lot of the anxiety that I had about, you know, you just a website, for example, right? You think like, oh, how am I going to present myself? How you know, everything from the font that you use and all of those different things. And they're things that you get anxiety about. You need to put a lot of thought into it, and you are just going to keep, you know, doing stuff and then undoing it and then doing it again. And that's like a process, which, you know, I think is normal. But I think, you know, like sort of coming from the more like the art side, it's still, you know, whether you're sort of sending out music or anything, I think approaching a solicitor, I think one of the interesting things that you said was that it's not like fitting a square hole or a square peg in a round hole, because and I remember this, you know, because I've got a music background as well, you get preoccupied like, which label am I going to send it to, and that makes you not send stuff out, because you think, oh, this isn't as good as so and so artist on this label or whatever, right? And so like one of the main like things I could wish, you know, if I went back, is, you know, sort of like don't be shy, because there's so many times where you think what you're making at the time is totally rubbish, and it's because you don't have like an objective perspective, and then 10 years later you listen back and you're like, oh, you know, you feel really, you wish that, you know, you sent it out or did something with it. So yeah, really, like, don't be shy, sort of kind of think outside the box. And, you know, I think the biggest hurdle really is like yourself in a lot of cases. And I think having that solicitor or someone, you know, as a kind of neutral party, just in itself, I think is quite a good sort of point of orientation, because everyone that, even if you ask, you know, feedback from like your peers or something, it's always going to be tinted, either because they're like your friends are not going to say something, or, you know, they're like your colleagues and they're listening to it in a very like specific kind of way. But I think that thing of like, well, just ignoring that side of it and just knowing like the industry side, oh, this person is going to be good for this, because it's in their interest actually to get you work.
Exactly.
So,
the more work they get you, the more work they're going to get.
So I think that's a really good point to learn. So just to kind of circle back to your question, I remember when I was the first thing that kind of comes to mind was when I sort of just soon after graduating, you know, I was like, okay, great. You get always like there's a euphoric, but then a kind of a come down. It's like, okay, so who wants some sound art? And you know, no one. But so I was really thinking like along those lines. I was like, okay, well that was nice, and I started thinking, okay, well maybe, you know, should I be doing like commercial music? I could be doing this kind of stuff, because I was also making like electronic music and stuff at the time as well. But there just like an opportunity came up where I just saw like someone was looking for a sound artist, or it wasn't even that specific. It was someone who knew about like sound installations or something. And long story short, it was at a sort of like an agency, and they invited me to do a sound installation. But this is like a dream kind of thing. I was still really unsure, even after doing the whole thing, and I put so much effort into it, I wasn't like thinking about, like even charging for it, right? It was kind of, I just sort of assumed I was kind of, going to do it for free or whatever, and that'd be fine. Yeah, I just, the boss was just like, of the company was like, yeah, don't forget to invoice and stuff for today. And I was like, okay, by the way, how much did I invoice? And I won't say how much it was, but it was like way more than I thought. It was like 3 figures, which to me at the time as a student was, like just loads of money. It was enough to pay the rent for that month anyway, which was like answering your question vaguely. But the point is kind of never have any like preconceived notions of, like, oh, don't do something even if you're really passionate about it, but don't do it because you think that there won't be an audience or a market for it. I think that like that really taught me in a way that I don't know, it just kind of opened up your horizons a little bit, because you get introduced to quite a specific thing at university, but also when you're in a scene, if you're like in the drum and bass scene or whatever, your scope is really limited to one scene. And so when I saw like, I just never even expected that, like, I mean, I did things where I remember one project, and this kind of like continued where I became like an artist in residence for this place as well, which was nice and completely unexpected. But I worked on kind of fun projects where I was like playing the kind of the CEO of like multinational like banks and stuff, like recordings of people like on the edge just because of how bad their customer service was and stuff, So like there's lots of kind of the stuff you never think about, and I don't think that you should rule anything out, like, I mean, I know maybe some people have got like, some people want to be like really core or really like, underground or whatever, but I think if you put too many limitations on yourself, then I mean, it's there isn't I mean, just before this we were just saying like there isn't like a manual on how to do it, and that's some of the hardest part about it. You're like learning as you go along, and you're not going to be able to learn those things unless you do things, even if it's a mistake. You have to allow yourself to do those mistakes. So, yeah, long answer.
I like it.
There was so much that you said that really like connected. So
Totally. And thinking about the kind of granular detail that we went into with Alex's answer about how to put the email together and so on, that relationship that you developed with the agency, what advice would you give about how to meet those people or how to approach them, and in what fashion?
Well, I think that there's a step before that, which I really wish it took me years to get this nailed down, but like you have to be organized, and I think that's really difficult when you're a student. You have this framework where like people are giving you deadlines, and you've got that kind of thing. And in my experience, creative types are not necessarily the most regimented things. Like we like to be our own boss, we like to be creative and stuff like that. But one of the and we'll still always be like that. It's just a case of like how much you learn, like sort of how to flag it or how to rein in some of your more casual habits. But I think what you're going to find is, or at least what I found, was that that's really one of the things that distinguishes whether you're able to become professional at it at all, and that it's a really boring answer, but like there's so many things that I learned the hard way, where just writing notes, having like a decent system, or like file naming, like so that because I mean you have deadlines at school, right? Like dissertation or whatever, but it's a different thing when you've got a client and you have to give this in, you know, and you've got like 24 hours to do it, and you know, the pressure is just unbelievable because you know there'll be a lot of money involved sometimes, and it's not your money, and you might be representing someone else, you know, so it's like yeah, a lot of things to think about, and also that to stay on top of. So like just scheduling as well is really important, and that's not just like using a calendar, but that's like actually. So for me, I think my weakest point is like estimating how long something takes.
Yeah,
right?
always takes much longer than you.
Yeah, so like at least twice as long.
Yeah.
But that's one of the first skills that I think you really need to. I mean, on a practical basis, it's like time yourself. You know, like how long does it take for you to make a track? How long does it take for you to record so and so? And you'll be surprised. You know, if you actually try and get a number to it, it's going to be much longer, and the deadlines are so like ridiculous, especially in this day and age, and they'll be given by people who won't actually know what the process is, especially about sound, because in general people just think, oh well, just they don't know the difference between DJ or kind of any like musician, sound artist. So and they're also not interested in hearing about it, right?
You don't want to hear complaints, just get it done.
Oh, that's an amazing one that we should underline there. They don't want to hear complaints. Like if you try and explain too much, then they're not going to want to hear it, or, probably not. Like,
it's important not to have a level of diplomacy and make sure that you are happy to approach them if you are having any difficulties. Because I think that sometimes I've been scared to do that in the past, and sort of felt I was so grateful just to have the job and the opportunity that I kind of either undersold myself or sort of not said or renegotiated or sort of not sort of spoke up when I should have. And I definitely think I've got better at that, and I think that comes from experience and having a bit more self-respect also, and sort of saying, look, actually, as much as I don't want to break your balls, let's have another discussion.
No, that's completely right, and like you said, that's one of the things I think experience really teaches you that. But I mean, as a shortcut sort of way, so that you don't have to spend years of underselling yourself, which I think is the probably common to most people, because you're so for example, like especially when it's on a per job basis, say like you've got this job and it'll be like £500 or let's say £1,000. That sounds like a lot of money, right? But then break it down and actually, like, so for example, and this links into something that's quite difficult for a lot of people. What do you charge? Because it's not straightforward. But if you give yourself an hourly rate, and it doesn't have to, it can just even be like minimum wage if you want. But give yourself an hourly rate, and then calculate how long it's going to take you to do this job, and then that will give you a figure in your head that will be like a good starting point, and then if you have to work overtime, or like for example, if you're upfront with the client, and this is where I think communication and rapport is important, because even though at the time it might feel like you're being nice if you're just saying like, oh, I'll do it, and actually you come across as really unprofessional, because first of all you haven't got the time management skills to anticipate that there might be problems. There will be problems.
And they respect that, they respect you sort of being upfront about
exactly
being unsure about how long it might take.
Exactly. So if you can kind of say, okay, well, show them almost your workings out, like this will be like I estimate that it's going to take this long, and but there's a possibility that it might be another 1 or 2 days depending on this, and that gives them more options that they can also do.
They can then work within those parameters, because they're probably delivering that to somebody else who's got an expectation from them.
Exactly. There's a whole, it's rarely that you have to be working with just one person or just yourself. There's always a team, and it's also about being respectful for like other people's time as well.
Exactly.
So I guess like just to kind of connect it to your question in a way, and just to merge it slightly with what was being said earlier, I think there isn't any one right or wrong way of like meeting people. It can literally, you can get like, you know, you can get a job by someone that you meet at a party or whatever. But I think the consistent thing is that you have to, and you know, I was kind of going to mention this later, but it's a good time to mention it now, that don't be too extreme, like one way or the other. Like there's a temptation. I'm not like, you know, if you can be serious and professional, but it doesn't mean that you have to like never go out. But when you do go out, even if you go to a party, always have in the back of your head like how that relates, you know, like think of, you know, sort of your own development, see what, you know. And I remember I was like thinking, you know, because I do a lot of sort of field recording. If I'd be on a location, I'll just be sort of, you know, in the background, just sort of listening and thinking on a professional basis almost. But also just be like, you know, like respectful and make a good impression, and you know, because you never know who's sort of, you know, what kind of connection you make.
And when I like distill that down into a sentence, basically opportunities come up, and when they do come up, I feel that the approach is yes and the and is these are my conditions. So for example, it's like, so here's the turn. So like having an idea, as you say, about time benching your practice, knowing how long it takes to do whatever it is that you're offering, knowing what that is, knowing what your rate card is, and from an artist perspective, an Arts Council funded project would, for example, have an expectation that every artist that's involved is being paid fairly according to a published list of artist rates, hourly rates. So for emerging students, like people who may be watching, there is, I believe it's about £25 an hour. So
and you can look these up online actually, which is quite handy. This is something, you know, I've had to refer to this before, like even when it's something random, say doing like a voiceover job that you never usually do or something, and you don't know what the rates are. If you look them up, and if the client, you know, and they might not be even from England, they could be from anywhere. If they're asking about, okay, well, why is this price so and so, you can just
them to that.
Exactly. This is the, you know, the
industry standard. Friend.
Exactly. Yeah. So that really helps as well, because you're not, you know, I think the tendency is just to be like shy almost. Yeah. Feel bad that you're even charging.
I think it's important to also know when your market worth has changed. If you're progressing in your industry, it's difficult to know when that is. You know, I mean, if you're sort of just treading along, or if you've, you know, had a successful song or a successful release or what have you, it's when is the time when you up your rates? And if you know what you're capable of, I think it's when you demonstrate what you're capable of into the marketplace, and that's when, and it's seen visually, you know, that's when you can start, you know, changing your market worth and things.
I think you also have to be quite intuitive though, because it's not like, okay, I'm at this level and my market rate is this. Like your relationship is going to be different to different people, and sometimes you have to know when actually or like you might think, for example, well, I'll do this cheaper, or you know, or even for free, because
it's going to benefit me in some other way.
Or to put it, you know, less like coldly than that.
It's all about the back.
But I mean, you're exactly right. But that you got to think, you know, like I think particularly within creative things, it's a lot more about relationships. Right?
For sure.
Like you said about the solicitor and stuff like that. So like, you know, if you're going to be like not a very nice person or something, then that's not going to really do you any favors. Whereas, you know, but so it's really a balance. Like you don't want to be overly nice and just do everything for free, because you know people get used to that and you can come across as unprofessional. But then at the same time, you really need to listen to your intuition. Like, you know, is this a relationship that I think will grow into something else? Something. And then there's also, you know, is this just a dead end? Like, is it worth me doing this? Which is actually harder than it sounds.
So in terms of knowing our value, then I'm going to hand over to Roberto to give us some insight into how you got your first gig and what you wish you could tell yourself beforehand, and how you have been able to manage things like the pricing that you use to do film and TV, which is often it's going to have a decent budget, and any impact that has on things like your insurance and your invoicing process and your gradual career progression over the last 5 years.
Yeah. So basically, I would say the most important thing when you start is having credits. So basically having experience in the industry. So the first thing you may want to do is just being maybe a trainee for someone, maybe for another sound recordist who has already some years experience. So that way basically you get on set, you see what's happening, you see how that sound recordist is just doing its job. You may ask questions, you have space to make mistakes, for example. If you cannot jump straight into the industry without experience. So basically networking is very, very important. I've been very lucky to know a friend of mine who was already a sound recordist. So I asked him if I could assist him and learn from him. I don't think it takes long to understand how it works, like everything, what's happening on set and how people move on set. Basically, it took me more or less 3 days, more or less. So basically, I was with him asking lots of questions, helping him with everything, making up talents, for example, actors, wrapping up cables and everything. I already had some sort of background from the university. So to start this job, you don't need at all a degree. So mainly 95% of the people I know, sound recordists, they don't have a degree. So you don't need one to start in this industry. You may want to have one just to be more confident yourself, or maybe just to leave your clients more confident with you. Apart from that, also maybe just to solve some technical problems, I would say. So maybe sometimes you do have some noise going on and you want to solve that and you have to do it quickly. So maybe if you have some sort of technical background, you studied at uni, maybe you know straight away how to fix that problem. Otherwise, everything like you can still learn on set, just being there and making mistakes. So I would say at the beginning, like I did, as I was saying, 3 jobs, helping this person. His name is Pietro, so I will call him Pietro from now on, helping Pietro. I could make mistakes, which is, in my opinion, very important thing, because otherwise, if you are alone on set and you don't know what to do and you start making mistakes, your clients won't be happy, of course. So I would say first thing, just be a trainee for someone, just send emails, search online for sound recordists and just send them some emails asking them to work for them as a sound assistant, as a boom operator, for example. I started as a boom operator. And of course, you will propose yourself for free. Lot of people in this industry won't agree with me. They will say like never work for free. But in my opinion, you have to start somewhere. So everybody starts from somewhere. I started from nothing. I had no equipment. I had no experience. And I had to start working for free. So I did these 3 jobs for free. And then on my 4th job, I just charged £25 for almost 12 hours a day working. Before that, actually, I bought some equipment because I wanted to go straight being a sound recordist instead of a boom operator. There are some people who likes to do boom operating, other people likes to do sound recording. I preferred sound recording, so I had to have some sort of equipment, and I had to invest. It was roughly 3 to 4K, so not too much comparing to what I've spent during these 6 years, of course. But at least you have some basic equipment you can start with, which would be, for example, a shotgun mic, boom pole, and 2 radios, and recorder, of course. And so you can present yourself with some sort of equipment, basic, but it's still something. And with at least, I would say, 3, 4 credits, I've also been lucky to work on a feature film. So I had 1 credit as a boom operator for a feature film, which was quite important. I mean, working on a feature film, it means a lot in this industry. So especially if you want to start having this sort of credit is quite important. And yeah, I would say so. After these 3 jobs, you can just start your own. Have an idea of what the figures are, like the film professional figures are, who the director is, sound assistant, DOP. Know each one of the roles on set, because when you are on set, you have to be super quick. You can't make so many mistakes. You have to be certain, like if there is something you have to do it straight. You don't have to ask questions the last minute. Instead, you can ask a lot of questions when there is a pause, for example, or at the beginning of the shoot day, or even the days before. So I would say, like, keep in contact with your clients and ask as many questions as you can, so you will be prepared the day 1 on set. So another thing would be your behavior on set. So it's very important that you are polite, of course. That's important everywhere, I guess. That you are on time, and that you are confident as well. And yeah, there are so many platforms you can go and search for jobs. There is Facebook, for example. Shooting People is another one. It's very cheap, and you can find, probably it's the easiest platform you can go to get your first job, because it costs you like 30 pounds a year, and you'll find 90% of these jobs are not paid, but still you can get your credits, which is at the beginning is the most important thing in my opinion. So you can start there and then move to Mandy. Mandy.com is another one. This one is a bit like more expensive. It's £160 per year. So, I mean, it's not too much now, but at the time it was for me. So I had to spend this money. I wasn't super happy to spend this money, but I basically got this money back in the first week. So I would strongly suggest to go on Mandy and just subscribe there and search for jobs there. I'm not affiliated with Mandy, by the way, so I'm just giving advices. And yeah, but nowadays Facebook is the best one. So you basically subscribe to groups and you apply for jobs, because there is so many job postings there. You may need to have some credits as well to get allowed to be part of these groups. But yeah, you can start. I would say start with sending emails, start with shooting people, get your first credits, and then just try to understand what is the role in sound, of course, that you like boom operating or sound recording, and just go that way, go that path. There are many paths that you can take in sound in general on set. So it could be a short movie, feature film, corporate and commercial, so advertising. You could do post-production, for example, sound design, Foley. It depends on your will. I mean, so yeah, after the 4th job I got, which was £25 a day, I just went up £5. So I went, the job after was 30, then it was 40, 50, and then up to 80, I would say, before I started setting some goals. Because that's another important thing, I think. Setting goals, not too much difficult goals. Like it's useless that you put I don't know, your dream goal and you put I don't know, 1 year time to reach it. I mean, to me, it's not a good thing to do for yourself. I mean, my first goal was to earn £200 per day after 1 year working. And honestly, I managed to do that. To be honest, I lost so many clients, because sometimes those clients will call you back and say, okay, Roberto, we need you for another job, for example, and then you already put your rate up. So for example, they were used to pay you, I don't know, £30, let's say, and then they call you back in 1 month and you are already at 60. Okay, so maybe they will be disappointed. They will say, okay, no, it's too much for us. We'll find someone else. So you will lose clients, lot of clients, but don't be scared and just go straight to your path. And yeah, wait, because it will come at some point. I mean, it's like big brands, you know. Sometimes they put higher prices for I don't know, phones, let's say, right? So you see that phone which costs a lot of money and you think it's just better. Instead, it's a normal phone like all the others. So I would say just put a higher rate. I would say once every month. So at some point you'll get where you want to be. Of course, paying my rent, it wasn't easy, especially in London, because rent is so expensive. So it took some time for me to say that I could pay my rent, but 100% I could pay for a pint up on the fourth day. So yeah, that would be my advice to start.
Great, fantastic. Thank you, Roberto. And in terms of applying for things and looking for work,
Yeah.
we've got Mandy shooting people, and
Facebook.
then Facebook is key. And Facebook, there's also some overlap here in terms of finding arts opportunities. So finding opportunities where they're looking for proposals which may be paid. So
Yeah.
what's your experience been like over the last 10 years of applying for things and getting paid?
Well, it's funny. I was wondering if you're picking on me because you know I haven't been on Facebook for the last 10 years. So yeah, I don't know. But I think one of the things that I think is the most important, and I absolutely, if I could go back in time, I would wrestle myself to the ground until I did it, was do a show reel. You know, and I think that that's so important because you might be in a situation where you meet someone or friend of a friend, and you know, and then get talking. They're really interested. They want to hear sort of more about you, and you know, especially if you're you know working in a bit more of an abstract format like sound installations or you know, anything like that. It can be very difficult to really, you know, like what do you do? Point them to a website that doesn't exist, or like, you know, draw them like.
Do you think it'd be worth putting it on YouTube? Because then I guess like it's always there, and it's always, no matter where you are in the world, you can say, I can show you right now. Or would that be a bad idea?
No, I mean, so I think everyone's got a different answer for that. But even before you get to that stage, you have to actually make the show reel, and that is like. For me, it was a lot easier said than done because of all of the things that we were talking about earlier, like how do you present yourself? But however, like when I did do it, and you know, it was like torturous in a way because you're almost making a new piece of work on its own, right? Like you composing the show reel as though it was like a composition. So you're like thinking, how do I want it to begin? How do I want it to end? But once you've done it, and you know, it doesn't really have to be as complicated even as I'm making it sound. It can just be like, you know, some of your favorite things. You know, if you're making music, just put like, you know, make it about like 10 minutes max. I mean, mine have a tendency to like just over like speak, so I would probably like is a bit longer. But yeah, like 10 to 15 max. If it can be shorter, then that's like great because I think in the professional environment, the attention bandwidth, you know, the economy given to attention is so vanishingly thin. Like, people might want to know exactly what you do in like 30 seconds, right? So I think that Instagram thing you said earlier was great advice because like people want to get a 4D view of who you are. They want to see like what you look like, what you come across. You know, you kind of spirit in a way. So I think like getting a show, having a show reel ready, and also it's a way of showing like what you've done as well. Is really Yeah, yeah, exactly. But the hard thing about doing sound-wise is like, well, it's sound. But showreel implies that there's a video, and that was something that I kind of like, tried lots of different options for. So just on a practical basis, some of the things that you could try is first of all, you don't have to necessarily put anything, but it's going to be hard for people to listen to like a video with like 10 minutes of black screen.
Yeah.
However, it doesn't mean that you can't do, one of the things can be that for dramatic effect, or you can just have like some white text or something, make it minimal, like a photograph. But if you want to go for something more dynamic, you can use something like in After Effects. There's just a preset in there that's like a visualization. So just having something like that that's like moving, you don't even have to do any work. That makes it easier for you just to present just the sound piece on its own. But otherwise, like learn video editing. Like it really, even if that's what you're doing in sound, I mean, literally, it's almost exactly the same kind of process, right? So,
I think it's available on the screen.
yeah, exactly. And I think one of the things that you said about, having, the bow thing.
Yeah,
strings to your bow, yeah. That's so crucial because first of all, like learning just, okay, you're like, oh, I can't do a showreel because I can't make a video. And it's like, well, why can't you make a video? I mean, there's really no excuse now. You can
YouTube is your friend.
Exactly, right? So that's on like that basis, but you also have it on the basis where you might be in a situation where like you take on a job or especially when you start, you probably have a friend of a friend who's like, oh, your friend does like sound or something, and something completely, okay, I'll do it, but you don't know what you do. So like, you're learning like a whole subject at like 1 in the morning. You really have to like learn fast. So I think one of the key things is basically just when you leave uni, you can't just think, I'm gonna stop learning. That's when your learning starts. Like if you think uni was like intense, like the learning you do after uni is like, I mean, yeah, you're not. I don't think you're fully prepared for like how difficult it can be, but at the same time, it is extremely rewarding. So like any of the, it might sound scary like hearing these like things in one go, but there is an extremely rewarding to it. But it is difficult. So. But having a showreel, I think, is a good way.
Have a showreel, reduce your dependencies by adding more strings to your bow. Be good at a few different things. We've got a 5-minute warning, so if we have any questions, please put your hand up in the chat, and we'll switch over to you. And be aware that we are recording this for YouTube.
Just a quick thing to add to the question though, like for getting jobs, you can set up Google alerts. It's really good as well. So if you have a search term, because the problem with Facebook is it might not catch some of the more niche stuff. So if you Google, do a Google alert, it will email you like the moment anything pops up on the internet. So and then doing stuff like RSS readers like Feedly. Feedly is basically just like a website that instead of going to all different websites, you can just read it all in one go. So you can kind of
Cool. And Matthias, would you like to jump in on that subject about proposals, applications, applying for residencies?
Yes. So the question of getting paid work in the sort of field of arts, I think it's much more difficult than finding commercial paid work, which is why I think it's always really important to have like several strings to your bow, as already come up. In terms of applications for residencies and commissions, I mean, commissions are really the big thing as an artist. If you can get actually paid to do an artwork. I mean, you find them obviously through like signing up to the Arts Council mailing list, for example. There's also other organizations like Arts Admin, they have their own mailing list. And some of them specialize in particular like genres or fields of art. So it's good for you to find out sort of what organizations are active. And also, certain kind of galleries like Sherwood Space, for example, they have their own commissions or their own kind of artist development programs. So any kind of place that you see like that, sign up to the mailing list, and then when the time comes, then you have to write a good proposal. And that's, there's a lot that can be said about what makes a good proposal. But I suppose the main thing is to think about, you know, what your main idea is, how you're going to realize it, what the audience is going to be experiencing, and also how it relates to kind of wider debates that are current at the moment. So I suppose that's some kind of basic things. And then obviously it's very important to have a CV, like an artist CV. And an artist CV looks different to a to like a CV with which you apply for a job. An artist CV is mostly like just a long list of different shows you've done, different things you've published, maybe, you know, so it's just a list of, you know, you've got like exhibitions, performances, talks, publications, you know, things like that under different headings. I mean, you can find online examples. It's just important to keep that in mind. And then, you know, again, there could be a show reel. It really depends on what sort of call you're applying to. Obviously, you know, if you also work as a kind of more designer person, then you'd have a different show reel as a designer than you would have as an artist, because you're kind of representing different kinds of work. I think that's the main things I can think about.
On that subject of basically being discoverable through Google, Roberto's website, for example, is very search engine optimized. So that's another approach, which is definitely worth doing. So for example, check, like, what about if you have your portfolio website with some kind of professional SEO component? So if people are looking, especially for things like royalty-free music, those a quick turnaround, like same day royalty-free music. I've had numerous requests from people saying, I want something that sounds exactly like this. How do I do it? And it's like, well, maybe having some preparation and having that time benching that Julian mentioned earlier could help us with that. So I think we're drawing to a close. So thanks for you know, watching Making Waves. Thank you to Alex, Julian, Roberto, Mateus.
Thank you.
And yeah, basically keep making waves, sound people.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks. I learned loads actually.
Yeah.
So,